Captain America, the First Avenger, is chronologically the first film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and where else would I begin a rewatch of the franchise than with Captain America? I think it's kind of important to let you know that Captain America was never really my favorite in the franchise. In fact, it was one of my least favorite. Not least favorite, but it's in there. And that's mostly because it doesn't really feel so much like the rest of the series, which takes place in modern times, has a whole different feel to it. This one, however, has a lot of good things going on, but also kind of weird in the same way because it takes place in the 40s, so a lot of the background stuff is done in CGI, and you can tell the difference of what that looks and feels like than what the rest of the series looks like. The movie itself has to deal with the origin story of Captain America and how he went from being a little shriveled dude into being a super soldier. Somebody with super strength, super healing, super everything. And it's about him trying to prove himself as a worthy person in the war, but also it's about doing the right thing, saving his friend, taking down the Red Skull, and things of the nature. So let's get into it. First up is the people category, which goes over the acting, characters, casting, importance, and chemistry, all of which gets perfect points except for importance and chemistry. As far as the importance goes, I can't really say that every single person in the movie held an important role that added to the plot, because for the most part, it really came down to Chris Evans playing Captain America and proving himself and saving the day. And a lot of people influence him throughout the movie, but it doesn't come off as super memorable. Not even Bucky, who's in all the Captain America movies. His role is the least important here, and he's almost forgettable because he's his best friend, but it's really focusing on Captain America. So that gets half points. The chemistry, I don't think the movie is super into the chemistry. I think they have a little ways to go yet to see where the chemistry can go. It's there and it's not at the same time because it's more about bringing this character of Captain America to life ultimately. So that only gets half points. Everything else is perfect. Pretty much every movie in the MCU is really good with portraying characters. Their acting ability is usually genuine and it feels real and it has relatable characters, which really helps mold this series as something that you can really connect with. So the acting's great, the characters are really memorable. The casting, I mean, by this point, it's been 10 years in the making. You can't really complain about the casting because they have been memorable and they are still memorable today. So all around, this gets 8 out of 10 possible stars. Next up, we look at the writing category, which goes over the dialogue, the balance of the film, the story depth, the originality, and how interesting it is, all of which, again, gets perfect points other than dialogue and the balance of the film. The dialogue is fine. The only thing that really stands out for that as being important to anything is probably when Steve Rogers continually says, when he's getting beaten down, he says, "I can go all day." The whole of the dialogue isn't like that. It's just typical stuff. So that gets half points. The balance of the film, there's no real specific plot that they're going towards. It's a number of plots. First, the captain has to prove himself worthy, then he has to save his friend, then he has to take down Red Skull, but it was never just one thing, like I have to stop the bad guy, I have to stop Red Skull. That shows up later in the movie. So for balance, I'm just going to give it half points and say 1. The rest of these categories gets perfect points. It is a deep, meaningful story when it comes down to how they chose who Captain America is, making the right choice there, not just because the soldier is the best of the best of the best, sir, but because the soldier wants to do the right thing, sees the world a little bit differently than the other soldiers, has a pure heart. The depth gets full points. The originality at this point in 2011, we were still building what the MCU was, so that's good. The originality is good, and how interesting it was, I gotta say, this is a category I probably would have given half points to. For the most part, I've only really seen it maybe twice in my life because it was never one of my favorites, but I gotta say, after seeing Captain America in, so many movies since then, I gotta say, his origin story now seems a lot more important and interesting than it used to. So I gotta give it full points there. That gives the writing category 8 out of 10 possible stars. Next up, we have the BTS category, which goes over the visuals, the directing, editing, advertisement, and the music and sound. Only 2 of the categories in this get perfect points, and that's for the advertisement and the editing. A lot of action movies require the editing to be perfect and on point in order for you to really get the scope of the film and to be pulled into everything that's going on, and for the most part, that's what you get here. So, editing definitely gets full points in advertisement. It is as advertised. It's what you would expect to see from the get-go, and that's what happens. So, that gets full points. Everything else is kind of half. The visuals didn't really impress me because, once again, like I said, the whole background editing being a lot of CGI to fit in with the 40s was a little off for me, and I've never been able to fully believe that younger version of Chris Evans, being that skinny little dude, is actually Chris Evans, and not just a kid with Chris Evans' face implanted on him. Because we know what Chris Evans looks like. We've seen him in other movies way before this. It's a little bit unbelievable because of your history with Chris Evans, but also because it doesn't look perfect. So that only gets half points for me. The directing is fine. It's nothing spectacular. It's nothing challenging, so that gets half points. And the music and sound, I don't think for the most part this is a memorable soundtrack or anything like that. It kind of gets forgotten. I think for the most part, the Captain America sequels have a better soundtrack, and this is kind of lost in the foreground. So that gets half points as well. So the BTS category gets 7 out of 10 possible stars. Narrative arc category goes over the introduction, inciting incident, the obstacles, the climax, and the falling action. This time around, the narrative arc gets 10 out of 10 possible stars. Everything is perfect here. The introduction, it's an origin story, so it does a good job of introducing you to who Captain America, Steve Rogers, is in general, his character. The inciting incident is ultimately when he goes into the pod and comes out as Captain America with all the muscles and being Chris Evans and whatever. That's when he never can go back. So that's the inciting incident. The obstacles is like those 3 different acts that I mentioned before. So that's perfect. The climax, of course, it is a big culmination of everything else that feels bigger than the rest of the film. That's perfect points. In the following action, it does calm down and return to a new sense of norm that's different than the rest of the movie. So all of that gets perfect points, 10 out of 10. Next up, we're looking at the entertainment category, which goes over how rewatchable it is, how much of a fun experience you have while watching, if you have any impulse to buy it, any impulse to talk about it, and if it sucks the audience in. Only 2 of these get perfect points, and that would be the rewatchability of it and your impulse to buy it. I have rewatched this now. So I'm not entirely sure how many because it has been quite a bit since it came out. So this gets full points. Your impulse to buy it, yes. This used to be no for me, but now that I've kind of seen him in a lot more movies, I have a lot more respect for him, and I can respect this movie enough to want to buy it. This gets full points. Everything else, half points. Did I have a fun experience while watching? I gotta say, it's still not one of my favorite movies, so I didn't have a lot of fun while watching. Certain sequences, yes, but the rest, nah. So that gets half points. I have a little bit of an impulse to talk about it. It's not something I gotta tell somebody to watch right away. Half points for that. And does it suck the audience in? Like I said, with the fun, I wasn't pulled into the movie. Certain things get me sucked in, but the rest, I could be doing other things and not even realize that I was distracted. So that gets half points. The entertainment category gets 7 out of 10 possible stars. Now onto the specialty category. These are 5 things I wanted to know before I saw the movie again. So the first thing I wanted to know is, how does this fit well with the MCU, the cinematic universe that Marvel has created for itself? Okay, not perfect. Like I said, the rest of the films in this franchise take place in modern day. Even though, say, Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor have a lot of stuff going on in space, it still feels modern. It feels like it fits in with the rest, while this one kind of is set aside for itself. It feels a lot different than the rest. This is half points for me. The next thing I want to know is, how does it fit well as the franchise. How does it fit well as being a Captain America movie? Incredibly well, actually. I saw some things that I kind of forgot happened in the movie, and that kind of triggered nostalgia for Captain America in general when I watched it, so that was cool. But overall, as an origin story and as far as his strength, his abilities, I gotta say full points for franchise. In general, with the MCU, you kind of just expect action. A lot of action. The action that you want to see from Captain America is definitely there. It's not, say, on par with other Captain America movies or Avenger movies, but for the first time seeing Captain America, it's not bad at all, so the action gets a 10 out of 10. Now, like I said, we've seen Chris Evans several times before actually seeing Captain America. He's one of the few that you're really acquainted with before seeing it, because he was in Marvel before. He was in Fantastic Four. He was the Human Torch, but he also had his own movies that were fun too. So I have to say that Captain America sets Chris Evans apart from all the other movies. When you're talking about Chris Evans nowadays, Captain America will pop up. Maybe not First Avengers, but his character does, and this is his character's start. So Chris Evans, I'm going to give full points to 10 out of 10. Finally, is it halfway decent? Yeah, they made the movie that they intended to make, and it helped push forward what the Avengers stands for, and his role in that. So, 10 out of 10 for halfway decent. Our total score today is 85 out of 100 possible stars, 85%, which isn't bad at all. I think it's actually a lot higher than I initially had my review for this movie, so that's great. Guys, tell me what you thought of Captain America, the First Avengers in the comments down below. And for YouTube, you could subscribe to me, hit that like button, and hit that bell to be notified when I come out with my next review, which hopefully isn't too long from now. So, guys, peace out. Have a good day.